Hey, Marek. Hey, Kothney-Issa. Welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hello, you guys.
Hey, what's going on? Thank you guys for having us.
Yes, thank you.
We're super glad to have you here because you guys are debt to the free. And we are excited about you coming on the show to share your story in hopes that others will be motivated to create a story of their own. But before we jump into your story and what you all have been able to do, can you just say hello to everybody that is tuned in right now and let them know what you guys are all about?
Hey, everyone.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? We're glad to join the show today. Just to talk about our journey. We paid off $125,000 worth of debt in a 24-month period.
Yep.
All while living in our 200 square foot tiny house on wheels.
Yes.
So we're excited to be here and to share a little bit more and to get into more of the details of how that all played out.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to actually learn more about the tiny house living. Like I have this thing where I watch video after video on YouTube, and I'm just really intrigued by tiny house living. Like I am. I just love how people can maximize their space. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about that as well. So awesome. Well, congrats on paying off the debt. Can you tell everybody what did the debt consist of?
Yes, so our debt was a little bit of everything. We had lots of credit cards and also just different things that we were buying and putting on credit. So furniture, like anything you sat in our house we hadn't paid for it. We had a payment on it. Our cars, both cars we bought new, both of our degrees. So I had student loans, he had student loans. And then last thing was our tiny house. Did I skip anything?
Nah, nope. I think it was six or eight credit cards to start with. And then, like she mentioned, we learned the card depreciation lesson the hard way twice. And then, of course, the college degrees and the home. So, yeah, she got it all. She nailed it.
Awesome. Well, tell us, how did this all begin? Take us back, rewind the story. How did this even come up for you guys to actually start knocking out this debt?
You can go for it. She likes telling this part because she was basically knocking on my head for about 2 years, and it was in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, so we first got married. I mean, both of us, when you get married, you come into the marriage with different financial backgrounds. So we both kind of were just living life. And I was talking to my girlfriend. She was doing my hair, and she was telling me about a Dave Ramsey class that her church was having. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. And she was like, yeah, like you pay off debt. And we were in the perfect positions to do it. We didn't have really any expenses except for like cell phones. And he was making a lot of money, and I was making a decent amount for the job that I had. So I was like, oh, this would be great. We can knock out this debt and be done and move on.
Like why we didn't have any expenses?
Oh, well, yeah. So we didn't have any expenses because I was living on campus. So I was a resident director at my college. At the time I graduated and moved on to that position. And so they cover everything, living expenses, your utilities, food, like anything you can think of, they covered that. And so all we had was our phone bills and then his car payment. And so I was like, this is great. Like she was telling me about it. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go tell my husband about this guy, Dave Ramsey. And I like go home and I'm like, babe, like you'll never believe it. This girl told me about like this class that they're having at her church and how we can pay off debt. And he was like, babe, we're young. Like we didn't live it up. Like we can't just be spending all our money, like getting out of debt. Like we need to enjoy life. And so I was like, I tried. All right, I guess. And so we just lived it up, just vacationing whenever we felt like it and just living with the debt.
Yeah, and I don't even remember half these conversations. I guess it was just I had my own mindset. But then a few years later, we were involved in a legal situation that ended up with us walking away with about $9,000, like after the taxes and the attorneys were paid. And so this was the first time we had really had such a large lump sum of money.
Mm-hmm.
So by this point, 2 years has passed. 3 years. Yeah.
Like 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5 to 3 years has passed. And now I'm thinking like, what's the best way to use this money? So I was like, do we save it? Do we invest it? Do we spend it? What do we do? So I just kind of started getting on the internet, and that's when I came across Dave Ramsey. So I'm thinking, hey, I came across this guy, brand new, bright idea, and I bring it home to her, and she's like, yeah, that's what I've been trying to talk to you about. So once the light bulb went off for me, we both kind of clicked and got on the same page and started getting after it.
So when that 2.5 year period where you guys were seeing things differently, how did you handle that? Because Kothney-Issa, you 2.5 years earlier, you brought him the same thing that he came back and brought to you. For some, that are listening right now, maybe they had that moment where they were like, yo, Talent and Ty are telling us to get out of debt. I think we should do it. And their spouse is like, nah, I ain't really feeling that right now. And that could cause a range of emotions, a range of feelings. So in that interim period, what were you doing to just kind of be okay with it and being patient with it, waiting for Marek to come around to see what he saw later on?
So I think I really already had that example from my mom, because I remember telling my mom about this, and she was like, yeah, like I used to tell your dad all the time, like, listen, we need to get out of debt. And she was just like, I mean, it is what it is. Like now and my mom doesn't work. So she's like, I mean, we're just going to live how we can. And so I don't even remember being that upset about it initially. I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like we're missing out on a great opportunity. Like we could really be out of debt. Like we don't have any expenses. We could really be out of debt right now. But I'm like, well, maybe it's not that bad. We can just live with it. So I kind of just coped with it. And then, I mean, we were taking vacation. So you also are not going to be too upset about being on vacation, like, you know, a few times a year. Like we were literally just like picking up and going. Like he would have some time off of work and we'd be like, oh yeah, let's go to Hawaii, or oh yeah, let's go to Florida. It was ridiculous. We really could have done this, but it was definitely fun and I don't regret it. But a little bit of me is like, oh, we could have done it a lot sooner, a lot quicker.
So talk about the first steps now that both of you guys are on board. What were some of the first steps that you all took towards your debt freedom journey?
The very first thing we started doing was mapping out our expenses on a monthly basis. So we literally brought out like pen and paper and did it the old school way and started mapping it out, just to get on paper, you know, what were our expenses each month? What was our income each month? Mm-hmm. And just putting a dollar figure to it just kind of like woke you up. And you're like, wow, like, what are we doing? Yeah. Like we had just been kind of just going through life, not really thinking about it, not really being intentional about anything. So I would say the budget was the first thing. And then I started deep diving. Like I was just listening to Dave Ramsey, like day in and day out. Like,
yes.
She got sick of it.
He's not like, exaggerating.
Oh but I just found it so intriguing. And I'm like, there's so many other people that struggle with the same things. And like, everybody's so afraid to talk about money. And it's like, we like hide from it, you know? It's this big kind of skeleton in the closet, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. And so I just started diving into that. And I just found it extremely interesting how many people were already kind of plugged into that community. And all these things, I felt like I kind of hit a gold mine, you know, and finally, you know, was realizing all of the things that she had been trying to talk about. And I guess sort of the stuff I kind of knew in the back of my head, but I was just kind of ignoring.
So at the time, were you guys still at your job with all your expenses being paid while doing this?
No, we actually were already, so I had just transitioned out of that job and he had moved to Florida ahead of me, and I was moving to Florida to become a teacher. And so once we moved to Florida, I think it was a few months before we started to say, okay, we're going to like be serious about this and start doing this budgeting and start putting everything else towards debt.
Yeah, we moved to Florida in 2016, mm-hmm. and then we ended up starting the debt-free journey about a year later in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, so by this point, we had regular expenses, rent, and the cars, and everything like that. And we had kind of already missed the opportunity that we had at first. So the first couple of years we spent traveling and kind of wasted that time. But, we ended up starting it after that chance was gone.
I wouldn't call it a waste. I mean, it was good, you know, like marriage time. But it was, I guess, in the sense of like being financially stable, I can see that. But
so how hard was it to shift mentally? Because you all just came from a season of, as you said, living it up, traveling, doing what you want. Now it's like, we got to put the clamps on everything. Yeah. And I'm sure that you didn't just snap your fingers and you just had that mindset. Talk about the process of transition just mentally from how you can just say, hey, I got some time off, let's go to Hawaii. And now you're like, nah, we're not doing none of that. We're about to get out of debt.
Yeah. So I think for me, I kind of grew up not spending very much money. And so that was always my base. I knew how to save. I knew how to not spend money. I knew how to be frugal. But the prior 2.5, 3 years of all that spending, like I'm a happy hour girl. Like you can find me during the week at a happy hour. And so that was the hardest thing for me. And it was creating that budget and helping us to see like how much money we were throwing away on like food and just like entertainment in general. That was to me like the shocker, and it was like, okay, like we need to chill out and do, start scaling it back a little bit. And so little by little, we started scaling it back. And I think it became easier once we started to see debt go away. And so both of us understood, but once we were out of this debt, like we would have so much more money to play with. So that was not the problem for us. Once we started to see the debt go away, as we started to see it go away, we got a lot more motivated, and it became easier for us to do.
Yeah, that's what we always tell people is like the progress you start making starts to kind of build that motivation, just seeing the numbers change and seeing the the steps that you're taking positive. So we never started with all the jobs we ended up working. We just started, and then as you continue to go, you get more and more excited about it.
So talk about some of the things that you guys did to knock out this debt.
Y'all had like 20 jobs each. Or
yeah.
something like that.
So talk about like throw it at us.
It was about 25 actually. Nah, but yeah, we just started to pick up work. I think for almost the first full year, we just went with the regular full-time income. And then we had finally it was like 8 or 9 months or somewhere in between 8 months to a year. But then we got in there and we're just like, we cut everything we possibly can. We're as tight as we possibly can on the budget. And that's when she was like, maybe we need to also add some extra jobs. And so it was usually 2 jobs each, but there were certain points that we both went up to 3 jobs each, and then we realized that it starts to be so hard to schedule that you're kind of wasting some time.
Yeah.
So just having a solid 2 actually was more profitable for us than trying to run ourselves ragged with 3. But I ended up picking up pizza delivery, and
I apart from teaching, I was also coaching, and then during the summers I would lifeguard. And then I got into the restaurant business. And so I had no experience. So I had to start from like host, but I worked my way quickly to server. And that's really where the money's at. So I would go to school, teach, and then go to practice, and then go to the restaurant. And then in the summers, it would just be the pool in the restaurant. And so that was really where I got the bang for the buck.
Yeah. My full-time job was in retail security management. And then, like I said, I kind of bounced around from different Pizza Hut or Domino's and different pizza delivery jobs and different delivery zones too. I would try to find the one that was in the best area where you make the best tips. And then for a little while, I also picked up like an overnight job at UPS unloading trucks from like 11 to 3. But then there was really no money in that. So I pretty much left that behind pretty quickly and put more hours into the delivery. We were kind of surprised how much could be made, in the tip industry. There's a lot of money to be made, and so we always try to encourage people with because those are very accessible jobs. Anybody can pretty much go out and get one of those jobs. So we were once we got going and we found that rhythm month to month, it was like a different us, I guess, where we were just plugging away, both of us grinding as hard as possible and bringing it all together to attack the debts with.
Well, I want to talk more about the tip thing, because I do think that I don't want to say could be easy for most people to kind of find a job or at a restaurant or things like that. Did you guys take the tips and apply it immediately to debt? What was your game plan? Did you all just pile it up and at the end of the month applied it?
Well, yeah, with the tips, we would basically just bring in all the cash, keep it all at the house. And then once it would get to a certain point, like $2 or $3 grand, then we would just take it, dump it all into the bank, and then move it onto whatever that smallest debt was.
Yeah. And sometimes it really like changed on who wanted to pay off the debt like sooner in the month than later in the month. Because sometimes I'm like, babe, like let's just throw it now. And he's like, oh well, let's just keep it to the end to see it big. Or he'll be like, okay, I just want to like make a payment real quick, and then we could like do it at the end of the month too. So we would like flip flop back and forth between who would want to like pay it off soon. As soon as we got the money in the bank, we wanted to like pay off the debt, or just wait and let it like pile up to the end of the month.
Yeah. Talk about how you all were able to not lose each other in the midst of juggling 4 jobs. How did you all keep yourselves connected, keep your marriage strong in the midst of all the hustling and grinding that you were doing?
Well, I think part of it was there was a power in doing something together, like going after a big goal and attacking it together, that we really connected in a different way that we had never really connected before. But on the flip side of that, like kind of what you're talking about as far as like the quality time piece, we got real creative with it. Like if I got off work early one night and she was still serving, I would go to her restaurant, sit down at her table or whatever and eat. Or if she got off early before me, she would literally come and ride with me while I'm on like a pizza delivery route. So I would pull back up to the store. I would park kind of away from the door so my manager didn't see, run in, grab my next order, get in the car and go back. And then when I would pull up to the houses, you know, sometimes people would like, you know, sometimes they're expecting the pizza man. So they open the door. So I would kind of pull up to where they couldn't see, and she would dip her seat.
I'd be like in the seat, like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
Yeah, she would literally ride with me all night. And just, we spend a lot of time together in the car as I'm at work. Or I would
Probably dreaming, right?
Yeah.
Probably dreaming in the car. I love it.
Imagine a life where your money isn't strangled by mortgage payments. Imagine what you could do when you don't have to send them money that you work so hard for. Come get simple, powerful, and real solutions to eliminating monthly mortgage payments forever. America's #1 money couple presents Crush My Mortgage. In this exclusive course, you will be equipped with strategies to help you move faster toward the promised land of owning your house free and clear. Learn strategies to help you in the areas of payment acceleration, extra income generation, and wealth creation, all to help you crush your mortgage. Visit crushmymortgage.com and get started today. Join us on the path to power, freedom, and legacy. That's crushmymortgage.com.
Love it. Well, let's talk about the tiny house. This is my favorite part.
All right, let's do it.
So talk about your process, your why. Why did you guys get into tiny house living? And then you all, I'm assuming you all did it during your debt-free journey, or was it before your debt-free journey?
No, it was definitely during. You want to take this one?
Yeah. So we started the debt-free journey May of 2017, and then our anniversary on July 25th, we actually went that same year, 2017. We went to our builders and we said, "This is our anniversary gift to it ourselves. Like, we're gonna go ahead and go tiny." And he had to convince me a little bit because I was like, "Listen, we came from like Missouri with so much like brand new furniture, good quality stuff," and I'm like, "Where is this gonna fit? Like, what are we gonna do with it?" And he's like, "Babe, it's just stuff. Like, we can get more like later on down the road." Like, and after I detached myself from that, I was like, "All right, I guess it's just stuff." And I was like, "Okay, I'm on board," because we were just paying way too much money in rent and we didn't have anything to show for it. So we were like, why would we not buy something and own it and then just pay it off and we could later use it for like future rental value. So once we did that, there was a 4-month period where we had double rent. So we were paying off the house because we had to take it out on a loan. We were paying off the house as well as still living in our $1,100 like apartment that we were living in. And so we were paying double rent on basically the house and the apartment.
Like, while the tiny house was being built, we already had to start paying back on the loan for the tiny house.
Right. So like, he basically took another job to like sell all of our furniture and make sure we like had that money to use to putting towards debt. And then we transitioned into it in November of 2017. So like halfway, we were like, we get it. We're already on the debt-free journey. We already know this is going to bring back our debt, but once we pay it off, it'll all be gone and we'll be done. We won't have to think about it again. So
yeah, and just to touch on the why a little bit more. So we're basically in a phase where we weren't quite ready to buy a traditional home, just because of my job and where we were and kind of not knowing where we were going to settle down yet. And so in the meantime, usually what a lot of people will do is just rent until they, figure out where they're going to land permanently. And so our thought process was more along the lines of, how do we take this specific time frame that we're in our marriage and start putting our money towards ownership, but also something that we can later, get a return on. And so that was kind of where it came from, because even right now, I'm still working towards a certain promotion with my work, and that could land us anywhere. So we like the idea of being able to pick up and just go. And then once we do know where we're going to settle long term, I think we probably will go traditional and utilize this as like she said, an Airbnb rental. But it was really all about the timing. Had it been 5 years later and we knew where we were going to stick, probably wouldn't even happen. But we were just trying to take advantage of that. And we ran the numbers on it. And we, once we looked at the numbers, it's really like a break even. 4 years of rent is the same as the cost of the house. And so that break even point and understanding that, and then also having had some experience with Airbnb in the past, we felt confident that we could, make our money back twice, so to speak, once we do start renting it out in the future.
Well, for those like myself who are completely ignorant, because I don't watch these tiny house videos.
You should watch them with me.
And
like it.
You said that, there's a potential, there's a good ROI, and it's the, Airbnb. So kind of break down how that works. So
because I didn't even know that you can do Airbnbs.
Right. So like
houses.
Educate us on, we know why you got into it in this interim phase where you all are working on figuring out where you're settling, but you also have a long-term strategy to where once you do figure out where you're going to settle, this turns into an Airbnb. So kind of help us like with numbers to figure out like why this is a potential good investment for others to consider.
And did you hear this from someone? Like, did someone mentor you guys in this area? Like, how did you even know to do something like this?
Well, I think the thought process kind of came out of the fact that we had rented on Airbnb before. So we had a 2-bed. So like we said, when we moved to Florida in the first place, she was a few months behind me because she was still wrapping up her job requirements. So I was there for like 4 or 5 months by myself. And we had a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. And we just decided for some extra cash, let's try to rent it out. And so I would rent that out at $39 a night, and we would collect about $1,000 a month. And this is a spare bedroom, spare bathroom inside of our unit, which is obviously like a shared space. So anytime on Airbnb, when you're sharing the space with the host, it's kind of harder to charge more. But when a person has their own roof over their own head and it's kind of a standalone listing like a hotel or like a full house, then you can always charge a little bit more. So my thought process with this is when we're done living in it, probably somewhere between $95 a night to maybe $119, just depending on where the house is parked and what amenities are around it. And the math on that, I think, comes out to about somewhere between $35,000 to $45,000 a year annually. Now, granted, we won't rent it out, 365 days a year. Like, there's going to be some gaps and some things that don't work out because, just based on how people book nights, you'll have little gaps here and there. But for the most part, I feel like that's good considering that the total cost of the house was $55,000. So essentially in 1 year, we can make back what we spent on the house by renting it out on Airbnb. On top of the fact that we're living in it now and saving on rent right now, we're already kind of in a way recouping some of that money.
Right.
So like in traditional real estate, the profit is really all in like the appreciation, of the house going up in value. Whereas with this, it's a little bit different, where it's kind of like a rental income once we're done living in it. So that's kind of how we saw it. But we definitely want to get into traditional real estate too. It was just more of like the timing. We didn't really have one last thing. We didn't really have like a mentor, so to speak, but we did watch a ton of different tiny house videos as well.
Like me.
To kind of, yeah, exactly. Just to kind of learn about the whole process and everything like that. So.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, and we know it'll be really, like, it'll do well on Airbnb because so many people right now are obsessing over tiny houses, and so people want to like see what it's like to live in one. They don't want to buy one yet. They want to know, like, oh, I just want to see, like, maybe I want a vacation in one. Maybe I want to just like have it for a night to just see if I could do the lifestyle. So a lot of people over the last few years, it's been growing a lot more in popularity. So we know once we're done living in it, it'll be a really hot commodity.
So talk about some expenses that come with a tiny home. I'm assuming you have to pay like a lot rent or something wherever you park.
Where do you put the tiny home?
So talk about some of the expenses that come with that for some people that may be entertaining this idea.
Yeah, so I think we started for a while in RV parks. This is the first time we ever have been in an actual community. But RV parks were generally around like $400, $450 a month. Where we're at now is $500 a month, and that includes everything except electricity. So water, sewer, trash, and a washateria is all included in that rent.
And our electricity is not that much. It's like $30 a month, if that. And when we were in RV parks, we were like getting like $12, $15 like electric bills. So you're really not spending too much. Like we could leave the lights on all day long and it'd be like $20, $30. And so.
Yeah. And then we also have an expense for propane now, just because our tankless hot water heater is powered by propane. And we have to fill those tanks probably once every other month, and it's about $30. So it comes out to about $15 a month. The stove's electric, so really that's just it: the propane and the electric.
And that day came where after all these extra hours, after all these extra jobs, you were able to make your very last debt payment. There are people listening that are wondering, they're in the middle of their fight or they just started their journey to debt freedom and like, man, what's it like to make that last payment? Can you paint the picture of how that day went for you guys?
Yes, look, I can't even stop smiling because I just think about it. I'm just like, man, we are really like out of debt. Like this is really done. I just remember when we made that last payment, I was like, babe, is this for real? Like we're really about to make this payment. Like this is going to be it. Like no more after this. Like we're done. And then a few months afterwards, you're like, shoot, are we really out of debt? And then you look at your bank account and you're like, oh yeah, we're out of debt because ain't nothing coming out. We just stacking cash. And so it's like, for me, it didn't set in completely until a few months later when I'm like looking at the bank like, dang, babe, we really don't have no more payments. Like we're done. It was so great. Oh, it was great.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel real until a couple of months pass by and you're like, wow. And like even now, like I feel like we don't have any real expenses. Like there's probably, so we have like probably like 12 items that are on our monthly budget now, but like only 4 of them are like real bills with real due dates, like auto insurance and a phone bill. But everything else is like, places where we give money or like, leisurely expenses that we could technically cut out at any moment if we wanted to. But there's only like a few hard, due dates, so to speak, in our life anymore. So it feels really good because, you pay 2-3 things each month and then you're like, oh, we don't like, I don't know. It's just like now I kind of look back and I'm wondering how we even did that. Like some of the stuff I'm like, how do we even afford to do all that? And I'm like, oh, we were racking up debt and so it's kind of mind blowing to look back on it at some points now. It's like 2 different worlds, it feels like, so to speak.
And right now I'm not even making that much money because I'm like transitioning to becoming like a teacher in Texas now. And like, even with me not making that much money, like we're doing okay. We are not, like I went to New York in January. We're going to Colorado next weekend. And it's like, I'm not even getting paid that much. Yeah. And here I am, like we're taking trips. So kind of feels a little surreal. It feels like we should be going broke anytime now, but we're not.
Yeah, she's been able to have that flexibility to kind of take that time to figure out what's next. And my job situation was a big part of our move from Florida to Texas. And that shook things up for her quite a bit. And so now she's kind of, without having to have the financial stress or worry, able to kind of figure things out and work towards that certification here as well.
So walk us through that day when you all paid off that last debt payment. Were you guys together? Did you all do it over the phone? Did you all go into the bank? Which debt was it that you guys paid off last?
It was definitely the tiny house.
Yes.
I'm trying to think if we were together.
We were together. We were in Texas. Oh, I remember. We actually had just moved here and we were here for a little bit. And we had kind of just been holding on to the last one just because we knew the move was coming and we didn't want to like get here and not have any money. And then after we got here and got settled, we were like, I mean, let's just do it. Let's just like pay it off. It was kind of like we didn't want to a little bit. Like we was scared something was going to happen. I don't know. But it was about $8,000 left on the house and we just put it all in there and we just was like, dang, like we really just did this. And I remember it was a little bit delayed because the payment had to clear before we could see 0 on there. Remember that? Yeah. Finally, when we saw it hit 0, we was like, babe, it's really, I'm like, no, it's not going to say 0, babe. They're going to come back with a little bit of interest or something that's going to have us not out of debt. And lo and behold, it came back, was 100% gone. It was $0. I was like, oh my gosh, man, we really out of debt. It was kind of crazy.
I love it. So are there any challenges that you guys have faced living in a tiny home while paying off debt or not?
It's kind of weird because like we've been in the house for a little bit over 2 years now, but I don't think it really feels like it because that first 2 years was all the debt-free journey. So we were gone so much. We were always out of the house working. And so even though it's been 2 years, it doesn't feel like it, so to speak. And we would literally refer to the house as like our recharge station. Like we would come here, get a little sleep, grab a bite to eat, and then it was like back out the door to something else. So it's been good. To be honest, I feel like once you get rid of all the extra stuff, the rest, like that was the hardest part. Like she referenced it earlier saying like I basically had like another job. That's what it felt like when we were like selling everything because just listing stuff and finding people and meeting up with people and all of the stuff that comes along with like selling all your possessions basically at one time. It was hectic. But once we got over that hump, moving into the house was pretty much a breeze. And I haven't really, it honestly doesn't feel that much different.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think it comes with like some home ownership stuff, you know, like, well, I mean, it's different for tiny houses. You got to worry about leveling it off and like, I don't know what else, like
stabilizing it when you first get there. That is, the setup when you first move it from one spot to another can take some time and energy. But I think for the most part, like what we always tell people is if you keep your routines the same, like the less routines you have to change, the smoother the transition is, the better it feels. So like one example for us would be like having a separate sleeping space from our living space. Like some tiny houses, you'll see the bedroom is also the living room. But for us, we knew with us being on different schedules, and a lot of times she's in bed before me, or sometimes even before I get home when we were on the debt-free journey, we knew it was important to kind of have that separated so I wasn't like climbing over her to come in the door and waking her up and stuff like that. So just setting it up and designing it in a way that it doesn't disrupt your normal everyday routine,
right?
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So what's next for you guys?
So right now we are building up our emergency fund. We're about a third of the way towards 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. We probably should be done with it, to be honest, but after we got out of debt, we just been having some fun.
Yeah,
so
a little too much fun.
Some traveling. So we're tightening it back in. We spent like 6 to 8 months just kind of just relaxing and exhaling. Technically, we're still supposed to be in debt according to the original plan that we drafted. The extra jobs kind of sped it up. So we were like, we could have a little fun. So we're kind of tightening things back up, and we're trying to get that fully funded emergency fund, and then we're going to kind of start moving into more investing. We're already investing into a traditional retirement account, but we kind of want to branch out and do a little bit more.
What would you say to somebody listening right now who is on the fence? They're hesitating. They haven't got into the game yet of paying off their debt. They come up with plenty of reasons why they can't, or the obstacles that are in front of them they feel are too hard to overcome. What would you tell that person?
You just have to start.
Yeah.
Just start. Just write it down on a piece of paper. Write down your budget. Like, look at your expenses, because chances are you're going to realize you're spending money on things that you don't need to spend money on. Right now, it might feel like you can't do anything, but once you write it down, you realize, wow, like I've got, even if it's an extra $50, even if it's an extra $20, once you start seeing it, you're like, whew, okay, I can kind of wheel things in. And I think once we started, we were able to get going. So we just tell people, like, just start. You can't do it if you don't start.
Yeah.
So just start. And then once you get out of that, that is like so much more rewarding than the little bit of time you spend like sweating over it and getting out of debt and working hard. Like, just start, stay consistent, and that reward is going to be so worth it.
It's temporary sacrifice for the long-term gain.
Yes.
And starting the process, like, we didn't do all these crazy jobs and all this off-the-wall stuff right from the beginning.
Yeah.
It was a process that we built up, but we were motivated to work those hours and motivated to do those things. It sounds like a punishment. It sounds like it's hard and a drag and boring and all of it. But actually, when you get into it, you actually get excited, because for now, like, for the first time, you have control over your finances, control over your money. And you have a direction, and you're going in that direction fast. So it's exciting. You want to do these things. So that's why, like we say, biggest hurdle, like she said, is just to get started.
And we've actually heard that from people, like, well, like on our YouTube channel, people like get on here and talk about like, oh yeah, like, man, once I started and realized like actually how much money like I had to play with, like, that's been like mind blowing. I can actually like put way more money towards it than I thought. You just have to start it. Like, once you start it and you rein it in, you're like, oh wow, like I can actually do it. So it's not just coming from somebody who's done it. Like, other people who are in it or who have just started are like, oh man, like, shoot, I just needed to start, and this was going to get me going. So that's the key.
So if people want to keep up with you and you all's journey, where can they find you on the internet?
Yeah, so we're actually also right here on YouTube, Living Tiny with the Bushes. Our last name is Bush, so that's kind of where the name comes from. And then on Instagram, we are Tiny House Lifestyle with an underscore in between each word. So tiny_house_lifestyle on Instagram.
Listen, $125,000 gone up out of here. We are super proud of y'all and the work that you put into your process to become debt free. And we're appreciative of you coming on the show and sharing it with our audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.